Alright, so I'm going to show you guys today how to graph parametric equations using Desmos. There is already a video in the video support section on how to graph parametric equations in your graphing calculator if you use that instead of Desmos. So either one, check it out so that you have this skill as well when you're going through these problems. So the first thing when you're doing a parametric equation, I'm going to start with a basic one that doesn't involve sine and cosine. So I just pulled up a random problem and I have x equals t and y equals t squared over 4. So if we look here for number 1, this one does not have a restriction for the t values, whereas number 2, it does have a restriction. So that's going to kind of come into play on how you graph. Sometimes you may have to come up with your own t values to graph the whole thing versus like in number 2, if they already give you what the t value domain is, then you're going to have to set that. So I'm just going to do number 1. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to basically set this up as a point as if it were an x value and a y value. So it was x equals t and y was equal to t squared over 4. So I'm going to do t squared over 4. Now, once you do that, you're going to see a graph show up because it's automatically going to do between 0 and 1. Now, this is obviously not the full graph. You can kind of play, most of the time I just kind of play around with it and see if I can graph the whole thing. Obviously, if I were to zoom out, it's going to only set these values for between the t values of 100. If I need to see more, then I can, but if I just want to be able to see these values, you know, from negative 10 to 10 or whatever it may be, you can kind of set them the way that you want to look at it. So, I mean, we can still see that from negative 10 to 10, it just does it between those values. So if I were to actually change this up and go back to the second problem, and it tells me between negative 2 and 3. So again, I'm going to start my point, and x was negative 2t plus 3, and, excuse me, plus 2. And my y value was 4t squared over 5. And that was minus 2 at the end. So again, we see this little graph right here between 0 and 1, but the restriction that they had was between negative 2 and 3. So negative 2 to 3, and there's just the piece that for my parameter that they're actually asking us to use for that one. So pretty simple putting in at Desmos. Whatever x is, you put it in the x spot of the coordinate. Whatever the y is, you put it in the y spot of the coordinate. So same thing applies when you're doing sine and cosine. I actually have a problem that I pulled up that was kind of like a multiple choice problem that if you needed to graph this, you could see the values. So I'm going to start by putting it in. And I have x equals 6 cosine t and y is 6 sine t. So I'm going to set that up. So 6 cosine of t and 6 sine of t. Alright, so all I see right here is a small little dot because it's between 0 and 1. So I'm going to just start with negative 10 to 10 and kind of show you that it really doesn't give me much. Okay, so I'm going to kind of start playing around with it. So I'm going to try 100. So I'm starting to see this graph, but obviously if I were to complete this, it would be a full circle. So I'm going to adjust it some more. Maybe, and 200 works. Maybe something else could have worked as well. But regardless, we have our full graph here. So if I look at my answer choices, obviously A cannot be the correct answer because T is still part of the problem. When you're eliminating the parameter, you're eliminating T, so T should still not be an option. So I can just go to the next one. So I have x squared plus y squared equals 6. Obviously that circle doesn't fit the one that we have. So then I had x plus y squared equals 36. And we have two separate pieces for that, so that's not going to work as well. So I'm going to clear this out because obviously D should be the correct answer. So x squared plus y squared equals 36. And you don't see anything else kind of pop up on the screen, but again, I can come over here and click them on and off, and you can see that they are on top of each other, making that the correct answer. I hope this helps you with graphing parametric equations. I feel like Desmos is pretty easy when it comes to this. If you have a TI calculator that you would rather reference, again, go back to the support videos, and there is a YouTube video that teaches you how to do that as well there. All right.